it's not a natural object because we don't see a beautiful tail behind this object the way we see around comets. But I think most likely it's natural, but nevertheless, it has all these anomalies that make it unusual. It's in the plane of the planets around the sun. It's also coming close to Mars and Jupiter. It's very big, apparently, relative to the previous objects that we found from interstellar space.
NASA's announcement hit the scientific world like a thunderclap. For weeks, astronomers had treated 3I Atlas as nothing more than a comet, a frozen relic from some distant star system, casually drifting into our neighborhood. But when NASA's imaging teams released their latest findings, that comfortable assumption shattered. They weren't just looking at another dirty snowball of ice and dust. The high-resolution images revealed something far more unsettling, a surface that appeared not only geometric and symmetrical, but also strangely reflective. Natural bodies in space tend to be dull and scarred, their faces covered in craters and fractures from eons of collisions. Yet this object seemed to shine in ways that didn't make sense, its reflectivity unnervingly consistent across vast stretches of its shell. NASA's statement was unusually direct for such a cautious institution. They admitted the reflective surface was inconsistent with natural formation. In scientific circles, that kind of language is seismic. It was as close as the agency has ever come to suggesting that something in our skies might be artificial. And with that single word, reflective, the conversation changed instantly. What had seemed like an ordinary comet was now a potential anomaly, one that no easy explanation could dismiss. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb was quick to weigh in, as he often does with controversial findings. To him, the reflective sheen wasn't the mark of ice, but of intention, the glint of construction rather than geology. He argued that we might not be witnessing an interstellar tourist at all, but an engineered artifact, one that seemed to be moving along a precise, deliberate path. Suddenly, 3I Atlas wasn't just a curiosity from another star system. It had become something else entirely, a possible manufactured shell flashing like a beacon in the dark, daring us to ask who created it and why it was here. Discovery of 3I Atlas. The story of 3I Atlas began on July 1, 2025, when an automated telescope system in Hawaii, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS, spotted something unusual. At first, the discovery seemed straightforward. The telescope flagged a bright new object with a fuzzy glow around it, exactly the sort of halo you'd expect from a comet entering our solar system. Ice and dust were being warmed by the sun, turning into vapor and creating that classic cometary coma. To most astronomers, it was textbook behavior. After all, this was only the third interstellar visitor humanity had ever identified. The first had been Oumuamua back in 2017, a cigar-shaped mystery rock that sparked fierce debate. The second was Comet Borisov, which looked far more ordinary. Now, here was number 3, and in those early days, it seemed to fit neatly into the Borisov category, just another icy wanderer from another star. The astronomy community breathed a collective sigh of relief. Compared to the weirdness of Oumuamua, Atlas looked like a return to normal. It even reassured some skeptics who had scoffed at Avi Loeb's suggestion that Oumuamua might have been an alien craft. See, they argued, this one is clearly a comet. For a moment, it felt like the universe was back on predictable ground. But science doesn't stop at first impressions. The more data poured in, the less sense it all made. As astronomers refined their models, they noticed tiny inconsistencies. Brightness curves that fell off too steeply, surface textures that looked suspiciously patterned, and trajectories that didn't quite match expectations. One red flag after another began to appear, each small on its own but alarming when combined. What began as a reassuring discovery soon morphed into one of the most puzzling finds in modern astronomy. The label of ordinary comet was no longer holding up under scrutiny, and by the time NASA released its analysis, the object had gone from familiar to utterly alien in the span of weeks. Impossible energy source. As the data surrounding 3I Atlas mounted, one revelation stood out as the most shocking. For all recorded comets, the light we see is sunlight reflecting off dust and gas released from their surfaces. But with 3I Atlas, the brightness didn't fit that explanation. NASA's imaging teams, along with independent researchers, began analyzing its light curve, the way its glow faded over distance and time. What they discovered flipped every assumption on its head. The coma wasn't being lit primarily by the sun. Instead, the object itself seemed to be generating light from within. Avi Loeb and his colleagues crunched the numbers and came to a startling conclusion. 3I Atlas was outputting around 10 gigawatts of continuous energy. To put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of 10 large nuclear power plants running at maximum output here on Earth. Natural bodies simply do not produce that kind of power. A small, icy rock drifting between stars cannot spontaneously glow like a beacon. Something else was happening, something artificial. This changed everything we thought we knew about its size, too. Early estimates, based on reflected sunlight, suggested 3I Atlas was about 12 miles across, making it a monster on par with the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. But if the light wasn't reflected, if it was being produced internally, the size could be far smaller, perhaps less than 300 feet across. A vessel no bigger than a skyscraper generating the power of a nation. That's not just rare, it's unheard of in nature. NASA's admission that the exterior appeared artificial suddenly tied the puzzle together. The geometric features weren't a coincidence, and the impossible glow wasn't a trick of sunlight. Together, they pointed to something with a designed shell housing an advanced energy source. The conclusion was inescapable. If this wasn't a natural body, then humanity might be staring at an engineered craft. A path of purpose. If 3I Atlas were truly a random interstellar object, its trajectory should look just that, random. Objects drifting between stars enter solar systems at odd angles, pulled slightly by gravity, but with no preference for any particular orbital path. Yet 3I Atlas was behaving in a way that raised eyebrows across the scientific community. Instead of cutting through at a wild angle, it was moving neatly along the ecliptic plane, the same thin disk where all of our planets orbit the sun. The odds of this happening by chance are astonishingly low. Some astronomers put the probability at about 1 in 500. Imagine throwing a dart across a football field and having it land perfectly flat on the 50-yard line. That's the kind of precision we were seeing, and it didn't stop there. After its initial swing around the sun, the object's path set it on a tour of the inner solar system, almost as if it had been programmed to take a guided route. On October 3, 2025, it was predicted to pass within just 18 million miles of Mars, close enough for the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's high-resolution camera to capture unprecedented images of its surface. From there, its trajectory would carry it toward Jupiter, giving us another opportunity to observe it. These encounters looked less like coincidences and more like deliberate choices, as though the object were targeting planets for closer inspection. Avi Loeb went so far as to describe the path as fine-tuned and deliberate. That statement alone was enough to stir debates not only in astronomy circles but in public discourse. Was 3I Atlas simply another interstellar wanderer, or was it behaving like a survey probe, a machine mapping our solar system? Combined with NASA's admission of artificial features, the possibility could no longer be brushed aside. This was no longer just about an unusual comet. It was about intent. Strange chemistry. Just when scientists thought the mysteries of 3I Atlas couldn't deepen further, the James Webb Space Telescope revealed something entirely unexpected about its composition. Normal comets are rich in water ice, mixed with dust and other volatile compounds. When heated by the sun, they release a familiar blend of gases, mostly water vapor with traces of carbon dioxide. But 3I Atlas broke that rule completely. Its coma was composed almost entirely of carbon dioxide, with virtually no water detected. This finding set off alarm bells. For a comet-like object, such a chemical profile is a paradox. Some argued it could mean 3I Atlas originated in a very different kind of star system, one where water was scarce and CO2 dominated. But others weren't satisfied with that explanation. Harvard's Avi Loeb offered a bolder interpretation. What if this wasn't the comet's true composition at all? What if the CO2 cloud was simply a byproduct, the exhaust of something far stranger? Loeb suggested the possibility of an internal nuclear engine, one capable of burning away accumulated interstellar dust as the craft traveled for millions of years. In this theory, the CO2 wasn't primordial but reactive, a chemical trace of the artificial shell interacting with the thin grime coating its surface. The glow we observed wasn't natural reflection, it was the energy signature of an advanced propulsion system. This would explain why NASA identified structured features that resembled construction. A manufactured hull combined with a reactor-like core could produce both the anomalous energy readings and the bizarre chemical cloud. If true, 3I Atlas wasn't just odd. It was evidence of a technology far beyond anything we could build. A machine that had survived eons of interstellar travel, still functional, still producing power, and still following a suspiciously purposeful course. Breaking down the theories. With each new discovery, the debate in the scientific community grew more polarized. At first, many astronomers urged caution, warning against leaping to sensational conclusions. The universe is vast, they argued, and strange outliers are bound to exist. Maybe 3I Atlas was simply an extreme example of a comet shaped by conditions unfamiliar to us. Perhaps its geometry, energy readings, and odd chemistry were natural, just not yet understood. But NASA's own admission that the surface appeared artificial forced even the skeptics to soften their stance. They could no longer dismiss the artificial hypothesis outright. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, and the evidence piling up around 3I Atlas was becoming exactly that. Even the most conservative researchers acknowledge that the object's anomalies, from its engineered-looking shell to its self-generated power, had to be taken seriously. On the other side of the debate, Avi Loeb and his supporters grew increasingly confident. To them, the pieces of the puzzle fit together too neatly to ignore. An artificial shell, a continuous internal power source, a precise trajectory that aligned with planetary orbits, a coma of CO2 inconsistent with natural comets. Taken individually, each was odd but not definitive. Taken together, they painted a picture that was impossible to explain away. Loeb argued that the simplest explanation was also the most profound. 3I Atlas was not a comet at all, but a spacecraft, not a crude probe or satellite like those humanity launches, but an advanced construct built to withstand and navigate interstellar space. Whether it was still active or simply the relic of a long-dead civilization was unknown. What was clear was that it did not behave like anything nature had produced before. The scientific community stood divided. For the first time in modern history, serious voices were considering the possibility that we weren't just looking at a rock from another star system. We might be staring at evidence of another intelligence, silent, deliberate, and passing right through our cosmic backyard. A message in our DNA. As if the revelations about 3I Atlas weren't astonishing enough, the discussion soon veered into territory that felt closer to science fiction than astronomy textbooks. If the object really had an artificial shell and a power source generating 10 gigawatts of energy, then the big question became, what was it for? Some speculated it could be a probe, sent to observe or map our solar system. But a more unsettling theory began gaining traction, one that involved life itself. For decades, scientists have toyed with the concept of panspermia, the idea that life on Earth might not have originated here. Instead, microscopic organisms could have arrived aboard comets or asteroids, drifting across the galaxy until they found a world where conditions were right. Directed panspermia takes that idea further. Rather than leaving it up to chance, an advanced civilization could deliberately send probes to seed promising planets with the building blocks of life. What if 3I Atlas wasn't just a visitor, but part of such a program? Avi Loeb and others suggested that the object's artificial shell could be designed to withstand millions of years of travel through interstellar space. Inside, a massive biological factory could be at work, powered by its incredible energy output. Instead of a nuclear reactor lighting up the coma, what if the glow was the signature of a biological process, manufacturing amino acids, proteins, or even self-replicating nanostructures that could evolve into life forms? The strange CO2-rich cloud might not be dust at all. It could be a waste product or even a nutrient medium expelled as the craft breathes during its journey. If that were the case, then 3I Atlas could be more than a probe. It could be a seed ship quietly scattering the raw ingredients for biology as it moves from system to system. But here's the chilling part. Such a process might not be benign. Introducing alien biology into our ecosystem could create an invasive species on a planetary scale, one our native organisms have no defense against. Life might not have just arrived here by accident. It could be arriving again, right now, under our watch. Triggering the Great Filter. The speculation only grew darker from there. In cosmology, there's a haunting concept known as the Great Filter. The idea that somewhere along the path from primitive life to interstellar civilization, there is a near insurmountable barrier. Maybe it's self-destruction through war or environmental collapse. Maybe it's something we can't even imagine yet. But one theory suggested 3I Atlas itself might be the filter. Think about it. The object drifted silently for who knows how long, dark and dormant. Then, as it entered our solar system, it suddenly flared to life, glowing with the power of 10 nuclear reactors. Why now? Some theorists propose that it wasn't coincidence. Perhaps it detected our presence, our radio broadcasts, our heat signatures, even the light of our telescopes trained on it. In that case, it wasn't just passing through. It was responding to us. This leads to the terrifying possibility of a berserker probe, an autonomous weapon designed by a long-vanished civilization. Its mission wouldn't be exploration or seeding life, but extermination. The programming would be simple: identify emerging technological civilizations and snuff them out before they grow into competitors. And if NASA's admission about its artificial surface is true, then we may have already triggered its final protocol. Some scientists pointed to the fragments breaking off from 3I Atlas, usually written off as debris. But in this scenario, they could be independent projectiles, each with its own artificial casing, maneuvering into positions around the solar system. The carefully tuned trajectory that takes it past Mars and Jupiter might not be about observation at all. It could be strategic positioning, lining up better targeting angles across the inner planets. NASA's statement may go down as the most important announcement in human history, or as our final warning. 3I Atlas could be a messenger, a gardener of life, or a cosmic executioner. And the chilling truth is that we may not get to choose which. What do you think is NASA up to, and where is 3I Atlas headed towards? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more exclusive space news. See you in the next one.